Okay, hello folks. I think we are live. We have 218 folks coming in. Thank you so much, party people. This is CCL's June 2021 conference. My name is Patricia Rubio, and I am the Diversity and Inclusion Program Coordinator, so I work primarily with our volunteers and chapters. However, I am also here for additional support for my coworkers. And with that being said, I am here to talk to you all with some really awesome guests. We will have one video, but we do have Reverend Tillman with us here live. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to give y'all a little bit background on Reverend Tillman. He's a super cool guy. He is a graduate of Carthage College, the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago, and Air University. Reverend Tillman proudly serves as the 16th senior pastor of St. Philip's Evangelical Lutheran Church in Baltimore, Maryland. The past 10 years, he has served as a regional volunteer coordinator for the Mary Lou and Arthur F. Mahone Foundation, whose mission is to provide educational opportunities for economically and academically deserving youth, support healthy lifestyles initiatives in communities of color. So, Reverend Tillman, welcome.
Grace and peace. It's so good to be here. It's good to be
here. Yes.
Shout out to Baltimore, 443-410. We're in the building. We're here. We made it. And we're just so thankful to just be in the presence of everyone from all over the country, all over the world that is tuning in. Shout out to the East Coast and to the Mid-Atlantic.
Awesome. There's nothing like a good shout out from a friend. All right, folks, bear with me. I'm just going to go ahead and start my timer because I want to respect everybody's time. And so if you'll just bear with me, there's nothing like technical stuff to get a virtual conference going. So it wouldn't be a virtual conference without a little technical difficulty. Well, we'll also have Thais Lopez Vogel, who is the co-founder of VoLo Foundation. We're going to play a video that she has sent us. So that'll be in the second half. So right now we're going to have Reverend Tillman. We're going to roll into some questions. And of course, we have some folks monitoring the Q&A. So they'll let us know if you have some questions. All right, Reverend Tillman, you ready?
More than ever. Let's go. I'm ready.
All right. Okay, so first question is, how did you hear about the Carbon Fee and Dividend Act and CCL?
All right. We're not starting off with the easy stuff, are we?
No.
Right. So I'll answer this the best that I can. So I moved to Charm City. Shout out to Charm City, as I said earlier, to Baltimore, Maryland in October of 2019 after coming off of military orders with the United States Air Force. During that time, I've been plugged in with a plethora of environmental justice folks all over the DMV and Charm City and even the state of Delaware, being part of the Lutheran denomination. And in that time, learning about Faith and Climate Action Network, Interfaith and Power Action Network, and different subsidiaries of environmental justice groups all throughout the 443, the DMV area. My email, I thought it was spam because I said, how do folks get my email? I don't know if the feds are watching what's going on. But then I realized that some of these folks that I was meeting in networking activities and some of these individuals I was meeting in different aspects of just how to survive about this organization called CCL. I never thought about it again until we're in the pandemic.
Excuse me real quick, just in case folks didn't hear, and you are breaking up a little bit, did you say that it at CCL ended up in your spam folder?
Well, let me spam folder, and it was also my.
I didn't mean anything bad by it. I feel like we're bringing in a reverend who just so happened to make sure, you know what, let me check my folder. And lo and behold, here we go. In the path of Reverend Tillman, a CCL email. So I find that very interesting and exciting. Please continue.
Yes, yes, indeed. So I click on it, and there was a particular name, and I don't want to put anybody on blast or do too many shout outs, but I just started moving it from the spam folder to my general inbox. And through the work that we were doing in the season of COVID-19 and the pandemic, trying to get people to open the email, and I reached out to our leader for our CCL Baltimore chapter, and I said, look, we're doing a bunch of environmental justice work. We're not getting any credit for it. We, in terms of the congregation I'm serving, is it possible to get a feature on us? And we had a phone call, amazing conversation. And as a result of that conversation, she wrote a letter to the editor for the Baltimore Sun, which is the largest daily publication in the state of Maryland. And we got featured in it. And our congregational leadership saw that article. Everybody had seen the article before I even got a chance to look at it, because I'm a millennial. I don't, shout out to my millennials, but, we do everything on this device. But I ended up seeing that article, and because our leadership saw the article, they said, whatever CCL wants, whoever these people are, because they were able to Lutheran congregation on the map like this, we'll do whatever. So we found out in East Baltimore about CCL, and we said we're all down for the cause. And then I did my homework and researched the Energy Innovation Carbon Dividend Act. And I said, yeah, we've been needed this so that we're not throwing rocks at a glass house, but we're going inside the house to create durable windows to affect change.
Wow, that is fantastic. I think that is a wonderful story for a reverend to tell. I don't know why. It's so moving and inspirational. I'm so happy that it came to you in such a great storytelling way. So I have another question for you. This one is a little in detail with EJ and communities. So how do you believe that your work with CCL could shrink the achievement, privilege, race, and wealth gap in your community?
One of the biggest pantomimes that we're dealing as people of both privilege and poverty is the lack of education and equal access to this environmental resource, such as this term word climate change. In my particular community, one that does deal with a privilege gap, a racial gap, it has some of the worst and poorest educational systems in all of the United States, in East and West Baltimore. Many of us were not taught from a cultural narrative of what environmental justice means. So in a Black community in the inner city, we're taught that that is a Eurocentric, Anglo-Saxon, a white issue, when in essence, that's not true. I truly believe that climate change and climate issues impact rural and community of colors more than any community. We see the lack of equal access to clean running water. We see the high rise of environmental violence and environmental racism in our country. If you look at the map of the highest incarcerated communities, they happen to be in areas where it is not cool in the summertime. It is the hottest it's ever seen, the heat waves. We also see that same issue impacts the lack of equal access to grocery stores, sustainable nutrition areas. So you see the food deserts, you see the poor toxic air quality control because of areas of construction and redevelopment and
Right.
folks who are being pushed out of their community. So I think that just being able to have the basic level of education on this submatter is going to be the biggest part that's going to be able to close the gap. Because if we don't know better, we can't do better. But we have to have any folks that are able to be able to meet us where we are, of all different socioeconomic standards and all different educational standards, because that's how we make a beloved community.
Fantastic. And actually, great segue, because we have a really good question. It's coming from Kermit. He's in a Q&A right now. And his question is, I have gathered that the NAACP National is somewhat skeptical about carbon pricing. Do you have any insight, suggestions into their concerns and how to dialogue about them? Maybe I think Kermit meant with them, or it says about them. So the NAACP is skeptical, and Kermit's just wondering, what's your insights or suggestions into their concerns on how to start a dialogue with them?
Kermit, excellent question. Y'all got some tough questions for me, but I'll do my best to answer. I believe that the communities of color, especially some of our advocate communities like an NAACP, it goes back to lack of information, lack of trust. So if they see something that talks about the environment, it talks about the government, but it also has some type of conversation about justice and equality. I believe particular groups like our Panhellenic fraternities and sororities, like some of our historical bloodies and some of our historical justice movements, like an NAACP, SCLC, and Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee, which would be the equivalent of a Black Lives Matter, if you will. When they see anything that has government on it, they pause because they're not trusting everything, because the conversation has not been equilateral. What I mean by that is that people of color, people in poverties of community, they're not fighting for equality, they're fighting for their existence. And in this fight for their existence, they have not been taught or illustrated or demonstrated the articulation of how something like a Energy Innovation Carbon Dividend Act truly helps put money in their pockets as a lower middle class subsidiary community and the folks who will live in the poverty level. When I read the bill, and I know, Patricia, we've had that conversation, we've dialogued about it. We really don't see in the bill where it says it's putting money in a specific community's pocket. And that's something that I wonder, how do we have that dialogue? But again, to go back to Kermit's question and not to meander off, if you will, I believe that there's power and invitation to have dialogue with individuals. So it may not be on the national level of NAACP, but I encourage everyone listening to the sound of my voice to reach out to your local NAACP chapter leaders and members and have that dialogue with them. And if you don't have a local chapter because you're in an area where it doesn't exist, then reach out to the next area. Because these conversations are critical and these dialogues can be difficult, but I do believe that the results can be resounding.
Fantastic. There's one more question I would like to present to you, and it was from Callum. It says, I have heard that EJ activists are concerned that the dividend will cause working class people who would otherwise be in solidarity to be pit against one another. What would you say about argument from EJ activists?
Definitely. We're always going to see that. That's a historical traumatic issue that has been a residual effect since the dawn of time. We're always going to see communities that are pit against one another.
Right.
My initial response is it's not about being first or being right. It's about being effective. But I love what's going on in the chat box. I live for the chat, so you all keep it coming. But the big part about building relationships. Our goal is to build, I would say, authentic relationships versus artificial networks. What I mean by that is that groups are going to be pitted against one another because there hasn't been the ontological work and I would say authentic work in building relationships together. When I said at the beginning of how I learned about CCL, there were over 20 different environmental justice groups that essentially were doing the same thing but had a different name, not to shout out or not to throw anybody under the bus with that. But I always wondered, why do all these different groups exist if they're all toward the same goal, toward the
Right.
same finality? And a lot of it were faith-based groups, because the Lutherans didn't want to learn from the Episcopalians, who felt that the Catholics were too snobbish, but the Methodists didn't know. Personally, I don't have time for all that. I'm all about what is the mission and how are we going to move forward. So if you have the network and I have the people, we need to be able to meet together, build some type of, again, authentic relationship, not just to say one and done. Okay, great, we got the bill passed, let's keep it moving. Our goal is, how do we make sure that we are all doing our best to do our part? And oh Lord, the questions are coming in.
Well, tell you what, this is a great segue time, because y'all, and I know I want to talk to Reverend Tillman all day. Great stuff. But we have a video for you for our second speaker, and we want to make sure that we give them their time. Their name is Thais Lopez Vogel. They're the co-founder and trustee of VoLo Foundation, a native of Caracas, Venezuela. Thais is responsible for setting priorities, approving strategies, and allocating resources at VoLo. She envisions VoLo playing a leadership role in expanding awareness of environmental issues. She created Florida Climate Week, making it the most important climate-focused event in the southeastern U.S. Her focus includes childhood education and global health care. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and Garrett's going to play the video for us, and we're going to give Ms. Vogel some time. So get ready, everybody, and we're going to watch this video. So, because there's lots of folks that got a lot of stuff going on. It's fun.
As a mother, advocate,
here
and
we go,
citizen, I believe carbon pricing is our best answer to combat the climate crisis. It is clear that people are starting to talk more openly and understand issues like climate change and environmental justice. According to our data, over 2/3 of Americans believe we can and should be doing more about the climate crisis. So it is not a question of if we can do more. It is a question of how. Carbon pricing presents an opportunity to not only correct our path regarding emissions, but also accounts for environmental justice through the adoption of carbon dividends. Ask yourself a question: what is environmental justice? To many, that answer may differ depending on your age, location, and background. However, at its core, environmental justice demands equal protection and access regarding environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Why is it necessary? Well, going back to the 19th century, during the Industrial Revolution, we can establish a clear pattern of wealthier individuals moving away from the city, and subsequently polluters and mass industry. And while we cannot blame someone for seeking a better and healthier livelihood, this leaves the less fortunate to not only work in, but also live in dangerous conditions regarding both environmental and health standards. While environmental and health standards have increased since that time, the scars left by the Industrial Revolution still remain. In communities across America, access to a clean environment is still a privilege instead of a right. Just days ago, we featured a story in our VoLo newsletter that showed pollution from animal production leads to over 12,000 premature deaths every year. This is only one example of how we risk our health by not taking care of our environment. If we, as a nation, are to truly provide for the general welfare of our people described in our Constitution, we must ensure every American has access to a clean and healthy neighborhood. Personally, my fight for environmental justice begins with my children's future. Is it justice to pollute our world and leave them without the means to protect the planet? I think not. Every person should think about what environmental justice means to you, as well as what you can do to implement that idea in your communities. Carbon pricing takes many forms. However, no matter how you go about it, you must first ask two questions. How do you price it, and what do you do with the revenues generated? Protecting our planet is a bipartisan issue. There have been many proposals from both sides on how to price carbon. However, the one thing they all have in common is they are better solutions to climate change than what we are doing right now. I support a carbon fee. That is, for every X amount of carbon produced, you have to pay X amount of money, because it creates a natural incentive for carbon emitters to transition away from fossil fuels and into renewable energy, which we see happening today on a larger scale than ever before. In 2020 alone, the world's renewable energy capacity grew by 45% and was the only energy source for which demand increased. So far, our federal government has failed to pass any legislation regarding a carbon price. Europe is leading the way with their emissions trading system. And while emissions trading system in Europe is complex and does not in itself represent a carbon fee, carbon fees play a critical part of individual member nations' climate policies. In Norway and Sweden, a carbon price covers 62 and 42% of their emissions respectively. This has been worked as Sweden's emissions are down 11%. Carbon pricing serves as a gateway to clean energy because it incentivizes the move away from carbon-based energy. No matter how we go about it, the end goal is clean energy. Because of this, proper care must be taken in creating climate policy that not only accounts for the emissions we are making now, but that also inspires sustainable innovations that one day will replace our carbon-based energy. As I previously said, the second question you must ask when placing a price on carbon is, what do you do with the revenue generated by that price? The choice of that question is endorsed by both myself and Citizens Climate Lobby is carbon dividends. What are carbon dividends? Carbon dividends are monthly payments made to every American coming from the revenue generated by making carbon emitters pay for their pollution. For years, polluters have been able to jeopardize our health and air quality, and we have received nothing in return for that sacrifice. This is a means of tipping the scale to be more equal and saying, if you want to pollute our air, then you have to pay us. If you have noticed, this is where environmental justice comes into play. For the millions who have suffered because of the pollutants, they find themselves unable to escape. This is the first step in creating a just society that allows equal access to a clean environment. Of course, there is still pollution, and there likely always will be in some capacity, but at least we will have something to show for it, while at the same time incentivizing polluters to make the switch to clean energy. And while I support carbon dividends, it is worth to mention other revenue uses that have been proposed. The revenue generated by pricing carbon could go toward, for example, infrastructure, payroll tax cuts, social security payments, or to the development of sustainable energy adaptation. No matter how you slice it, carbon price revenue will be doing something to benefit us as a whole. Finally, above all, The source of many people's concern in carbon pricing is what it will do to the economy, namely, what will happen to the entire carbon-reliant energy sector, and what impact will that have on the rest of the country. This is a fair and important question to ask. After all, how can we achieve environmental justice if it means threatening many Americans' communities and livelihoods? The good news is that paired with carbon dividends, supporting and investing in communities.
And of course, it would not be a virtual conference had I not forgot to basically take myself off mute. So you know you're at a conference, at least a virtual one, when someone forgets to take themselves on mute. But thank you everyone for joining us today. We're so sorry that the video wasn't able to be fully played, but it will be on our YouTube channel. It will be on our CCL Inclusion Instagram, and we really appreciate all your time and patience, especially as we use this new platform, Air Univ. Now I'm gonna just give it to Reverend Tillman and just let him close off to anything you want to share, Reverend. Please do so.
Yeah, I'm all here. I don't know if folks can hear me.
Okay, let's see.
You got the email in the chat box. Reach out to us through CCL, social media. But remember to just keep the faith, and the evidence will follow, because I believe that the best is yet to come. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. It has been insanely awesome. I love it. So have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration. And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.